Hi guys, it's Leanne. I read quite a few books in August. So let's get started, shall we? And for anybody wondering what the thing in the back of the chair is, it's my Slytherin scarf. It lives there. Okay, I hope you all have a cup of tea and a biscuit and are sitting comfortably. The first book that I read in August is Everything is Teeth by Evie Wyld. Now you all know that I worship at the altar that is Evie Wyld. All the Birds Singing was my favourite book of last year. I absolutely adored it. It has a dual time narrative, it has creepy secrets, it has lots to say about the nature of humanity and about being alone, and it does it all in under 300 pages, like well under 300 pages. Just read the book. So Evie Wyld has literally just released Everything is Teeth, and it is a graphic novel featuring the work of Jo Sumner. Everything is Teeth is an autobiographical coming-of-age story about Evie Wyld. She grew up on the coast of New South Wales and became obsessed with sharks. But sharks became for Evie a metaphor for so many other things. And sharks is to this novel as Hogwarts is to Harry Potter. It is a vehicle through which we experience emotion. The art is genuinely so unique and just super impressive. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars for making me cry at the end when I completely didn't expect it. Next in August I read Soulless by Gail Carriger. Let me start by saying, Sona, you told me so. You were so right. Now it's your turn, read Peter Grant. Everybody has probably heard about this novel already. I, in fact, myself owned it for a very long time before I decided to pick it up. Soulless is the first of 5 books in the Parasol Protectorate series, an alternative steampunk Victorian urban fantasy mystery. Worst marketing ever. Alexia Tarabotti is a spinster who has no soul. She accidentally kills a vampire who doesn't realise that she has no soul, or that there's etiquette and manners. Lord Macon is a Scottish pissy werewolf. He is in charge of the London division of BUR. BUR being the Bureau of Unnatural Registry, upon which every supernatural being must have its name. Problem is, the vampire that Alexia killed was not on the registry. And things kind of go to shit from there. This book is awesome. It's a fantasy of manners, so there's a lot of play on gentility and morality and what is socially acceptable. Except when werewolves and vampires are concerned, who really knows? It was absolutely epic. I'm probably going to read the rest and just do a series review because I can't see myself putting off the next one for very long. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and the only reason that I knocked a star off was because I think it could have stood to be longer. It was really fast paced and lots of things happened, but I wanted just a little bit more of the characters in the middle. However, upon glancing at them on my shelves, they seem to get longer as the series goes on, so I'm sure that this will be something which is fixed. The third book that I read in August was The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. I'm eventually going to buy all of these novels separately because there's a specific set of covers that I've found that I really want. But in the meantime, I have this bind-up novel, which by the way contains The Big Sleep, Farewell My Lovely and The Long Goodbye. For those of you unfamiliar with Raymond Chandler, he primarily writes about Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe is a private eye in California in the 1930s. These are very noir, hard-boiled mysteries. In the first novel, Marlowe is tipped off about a case and meets with an elderly gentleman who is being blackmailed. And he sets about trying to find a way to send the blackmailer packing. But in doing so, discovers an entire underlying web of consequences. I loved this book. I did not expect to enjoy this novel as much as I did. And despite all of the really complex backstabbing in this novel, I actually came out of it with a huge smile on my face. And also, before I move on from this one, I gotta give Raymond Chandler huge props for the scene in which a very drunk and very vulnerable girl appears in Philip Marlowe's bed, willing more or less to do anything to get him off her back. She's young, she's pretty, she's completely naked, she's very drunk, and she's in his bed, and he forces her to put her clothes on. He actually tells her if she doesn't get dressed right now, he's going to chuck her out into the hallway and then chuck her clothes after her, because he wants nothing to do with that. Serious props to Raymond Chandler for including that scene in a novel which otherwise could have been extremely chauvinistic. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars and I will be picking up the next one ASAP. The next book that I read in August is volume 4 of Morning Glories. This one's called Truants. I think what I'm probably going to do is read another 1 or 2 of these and then do an ongoing series review. And it's really, really difficult at this point in the series to tell you anything without giving loads and loads away. The art in this one is some of my favourite in the entire series so far. I gave this one 4 stars, and the only reason I knocked a star off of this one was because, again, it left me with more questions than I had answers. But I think that's more personal preference than anything else, because at this point in the series things are only going to get more complicated. The 5th novel that I read in August was The Rental Heart by Kirsty Logan. This is a collection of modern day fairy tales. It won Kirsty Logan the Young Scot Prize, and very deservedly so. And it also has one of the most stunning covers ever. For such a tiny collection, there are loads and loads of stories here. I absolutely adored this. I mean, I've talked about Kirsty ad nauseum on this channel by now, but she has got a kind of lilting, lulling tone which I associate as being very, very Scottish and very typical of Scottish folklore and Scottish oral fairy telling. And it feels a little bit like coming back to a slightly more sinister version of my childhood. I mean, don't get me wrong, in every collection of short stories you're going to have some that you get on with more than others. And that's the reason that I rated this one 3.5. It's not at all because there aren't some 5-star stories in there. It's because I find it really difficult to rate collections of stories. The 6th book that I read in August was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. So, like I've said 100 times on my channel, I am reading both the Poirot novels and the Miss Marple novels in order. That's them there. These two. So Poirot has settled into the tiny community of King's Abbot and is growing vegetables and being adorable. And because Hastings himself has moved halfway around the world, this novel is narrated by Dr. Shepherd. And having side characters narrate some of the mysteries in both Poirot and in Marple is one of the techniques that Agatha Christie uses to distance you from certain parts of the narrative that Poirot is intimately aware of, and to draw you closer to some of the characters because you're more emotionally invested in them because they mean more to the narrator than they do to Poirot. I cannot possibly say another word on the matter, otherwise I will spoil it and I want you to read it. But I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It's pretty brilliant. The 7th novel that I read in August was Foxglove Summer by Ben Aronovich. This is the 5th novel in the Peter Grant series, and it deals with the aftermath of some pretty horrendous shit which went down in broken homes. This one broke my heart and put it back together again and proved that Ben Aronovich is versatile and that London is as much of a character as it isn't in this series. I didn't expect to love this book as much as I loved the previous one, Broken Homes, because that is my favourite book of the series so far. But do you know what? The tiny lull in the middle was entirely redeemed by what happened in the last 5 chapters, and I gave this book a resounding 5 out of 5 stars. The next one comes out in November, and usually with a series I try and let there be a gap between me reading the next one or the final one that's actually published, so that I've always got one to go to and I never run out, because I have that panicky feeling about running out. But I'll be reading it as soon as it comes out. It's just... The 8th book that I read in August was The 13 Problems by Agatha Christie. This is the 2nd Miss Marple book in publication order. And this is actually a book of short stories which are all interwoven with one kind of mechanic which sets the whole thing off. The 13 Problems features 13 chapters, all of which contain an individual problem. At the beginning of the novel, Miss Marple has a dinner group in her home. They are bored and they decide to play a game wherein each one of them will put a problem to the rest of the group, which is usually an event that they've witnessed or that's happened in their lives, which ends in murder or gore or mystery along those general lines. And then they won't offer the solution and they'll wait for everybody else to solve it. And of course Miss Marple solves everyone. That's not going to be a spoiler. Miss Marple is dazzling in this one, and again, you never see anything from Miss Marple's point of view. This is completely from the point of view of all of our different dinner guests. 5 out of 5 out of 10 out of 100 stars. I loved this book. The 9th book that I read in August was Beyond the Deep Woods by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell. This is book 1 of the Twig saga, which is set in the world of The Edge. This is The Edge. Essentially, Beyond the Deep Woods introduces us to Twig, who has been raised amongst wood trolls. Twig, however, realises very quickly that he is not like other wood trolls. He can't do what they do, he can't eat what they eat, and he doesn't like what they smell like. And very quickly in the book, catastrophe happens and Twig is sent away from his village. However, on his journey through the deep woods, Twig does what no wood troll has ever done before. He strays from the path and he wanders off into the deep woods all on his own, and calamity happens. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because it started a little bit slow and I did wonder for the first maybe like 3 or 4 chapters where the hell we were heading with this. But I ended up absolutely loving this. It actually blows Lemony Snicket out of the water for me.
Sorry, Leslie.
Whew. So, the last book, the 10th book that I read in August, was Animal Farm by George Orwell. Continuing on in my George Orwell kick, which started with Burmese Days and has carried on to Animal Farm and will continue on to Coming Up for Air because that's the next one that I've bought. I read Animal Farm years and years and years ago, as I'm sure we all did, and I had really, really vivid memories of guttural emotions because of it. There's nothing you can say about Animal Farm without essentially spoiling it. I stuck with what was probably my original rating for this book and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So that was everything that I read in August. That was a bit of a marathon video. Thank you to everybody who stuck to it. I'm so going to put these books down now because I'm going to drop them. Bye! Come on then. Padfoot wanted to be in the video. Ah! Bah! Who's that? You're taller than me. See, now you've been on camera and you've showed off. Go away now, yeah?